All right, welcome back. We are here on, and we're even off, we're on. 866 once again with Damian Leonard, and we are going to zip through, I think, the last 18 pages because there's not as many changes that are dealt with in the first 34. We left off on page 34, line 10. We can skip ahead to, and again, Damon, these are our pages. I know you're still coming. Do you want us to wait till you're on screen?
What section?
We're going to be at section 2063.
Okay, I'll be right there with you. I'll start talking.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. This is something that it's probably the way it is for all the other programs, but they really have 3 years to find something in this program. Back on page 34, the determination of whether they should or shouldn't have got the payment. It's more than 3 years for the date of the payment.
Yeah, that's based on the unemployment insurance program. So, oh, shoot, sorry. Wrong button. So unemployment insurance allows for 3 years. For those of you who have been following the current audit of PUA, that's expected to take 2 years. So presumably with better technology, you should be able to do the audit more quickly, but it does give a 3-year statute of limitations. You could set that at 12 months or whatever you want. This just caps it at 3 years. So
That just jumped out at me, so I thought I'd point it out.
Yeah.
yeah, do you want to change that?
Not my.
Okay.
All right, so then that would bring us to, thank you, Joe. That would bring us to page 35, rules, line 16, which is just rulemaking. I assume that the changes there with 2053 and 2069 that are highlighted are just realignments.
Yeah, those are just changing the cross-reference because we moved sections.
Yep.
B is the real substantive one. If we're taking the financial regulation out of the approval of the private plans, then you can delete that section or subsection B.
Say that again, if we're taking what?
If you are taking the commissioner financial regulation out of the process of approving a private plan to meet the requirements of the paid leave law, then you can just delete that subsection. And
Okay.
I think at this point you've approved the switch, so.
Yep, okay, everybody fine with that? Okay, 2064 is just a section number change. 5 on page 37. Line 12 is where we have more information.
Yeah, so we talked about this yesterday. The basically preventing someone from making someone ineligible for benefits if they're getting paid wages or they're receiving sick leave, vacation leave, combined time off leave, any sort of accrued paid leave. And this is to track with the unemployment insurance law. It ensures that someone's not working at the same time that they're seeking benefits for being out of work. It's more of a belts and suspenders because you're already supposed to be unable to work. But this goes with that, and it does recognize too that individuals already have the option of choosing to take, for example, sick pay or paid leave benefits, but not, it basically says you can't take both.
Just a scenario. So a woman is taking bonding leave, is CFO of her company, and they call her and say, "Oh my God, you got to help us. Can you give us a day just to, set everybody straight?" And she says, yes, I can do that because it's, she's physically, mentally capable.
Mhm.
So she goes in and saves the company. I'm assuming under this, she could do that, just she couldn't be compensated for it.
Yeah, she'd just be disqualified from receiving benefits that week.
She
That's the way.
If she got paid for it, she'd be disqualified.
Right, so she could do it,
And
continue to
if
receive
she got
benefits.
paid for the one day, she'd be disqualified for the week,
But she could do it
the way it's worded.
voluntary basis and continue to, or,
She could, yep.
okay.
So this is a policy decision. It's not you have to have this. But it basically requires people to choose how they're gonna structure their paid leave. Are they gonna use their accrued leave from their employer? Are they going to be working part of a week? And if they do, and actually it's occurring to me as I'm talking to you about this, one thing that I would actually recommend changing if you keep the wages or remuneration for vacation, sick. Certainly the wages is because you allow intermittent leave, you have to say for any day. Because otherwise, if someone's taking intermittent leave, like we've discussed before, you would automatically be disqualified for the whole week. That's an internal inconsistency that I just didn't think of at whatever time it was last night that I added this language. The sick leave, vacation leave, and other accrued paid leave, you could limit that to a day as well. For the unemployment and the workers' comp, that's paid on a weekly basis. So that's a week-to-week thing. For the wages and the other leave, though, you could do that on a day-to-day basis. So if I have 3 days of vacation leave, I might use those 3 days of vacation leave because it gives me higher wage replacement. And then on Thursday, I start my leave benefits. And I guess that's theoretically possible if you move over to the 1 day. But you don't have to include any of this language. It's implied that you're not working already from the earlier language, which says that to be eligible, you have to be unable to work because of one of the following reasons. So this is more belts and suspenders language than anything else.
I like this, I think if we're including 1A and B, we might as well include, and 2. I think we might as well include 3 and 4.
Want to just specify that it's for a work day?
Yeah.
Okay. Other thoughts, discussion, questions? No? Okay.
All right, section 2066. No changes. 2067. No change. 2068. No change. All the way up to page 40 to 2069. Is the refund of contributions. This is a policy decision. We've talked about it in both directions. What's your pleasure? Yes, Representative James.
I'll just toss out there my feeling that this might be a super complex mechanism and that maybe we could scrap it.
Go.
One of the options that has been floated is a flat payment, flat refund, and I don't understand that. Could you
So
expand on that a little bit?
if I understood Commissioner Bolio correctly, what he was proposing is essentially a checkbox on your income tax return where, or even just an automatic refund if you're under $25,000 per year, you would get a $100 refundable tax credit. So there's two types of tax credits, non-refundable and refundable. Is everyone familiar with the difference? Okay, good. So it'd be a $100 refundable tax credit. The idea is it's an additional incentive for people with lower incomes to file and take advantage of things like the EITC, which can be a source of, it's underutilized, but it's a source of state money to be provided to lower income Vermonters. So that would be one option. I would have to work with Abby Shepherd to draft it. It's more complicated than this. But it would be an option to basically say $100 flat tax credit for individuals who earn less than $25,000 in adjusted gross income or something like that.
The thing about this is we're really not talking about large sums of money.
No, I think we figured out that it's about $70.
Yeah.
Is the amount. So 100 is just the round number.
Right.
So yeah, it's a refund that can provide you with a capped amount of about $70 if you qualify. So.
Representative Lamont.
Okay, two things. One, I don't know what a non-refundable tax credit is.
So, thank you. Always speak up. Yeah. So a refundable tax credit means that if your tax liability goes below zero, you get whatever's left as a refund. A non-refundable tax credit means it can bring you down to zero, but it can't give you any money back. So refundable tax credits are great because it means the government might pay you just for qualifying for the tax credit.
Thank you for that.
So,
And then the second thing was, so if you were to do this as the tax credit versus the refund with all of the tax is it the same? Would the same tax separations be, would it be all the extra calculations? I'm trying to see which is less complicated.
well, so the complication with this, as I understood the commissioner's testimony, is that for each of these individuals, the department would have to go in and do an individualized determination of what their income was. Some of these individuals may earn so little that they're not required to file a tax return normally. So the tax department has to go in and do that individualized determination and then cut individual checks for a different number for each claimant versus a flat where it's just, if you're under 25,000, you get an extra however much off of your tax liability and possibly as a refund. So there's just all of that administrative work that goes into ensuring that the numbers are right so that, you might be entitled to 6726 instead of 6776, which means that you get a $67 refund instead of $68 refund. So, it literally can be a matter of dollars and cents.
I like the flat rate.
What's that?
And then I like the flat rate tax credit.
Representative James.
Just want to make sure I'm thinking this through. So I'm figuring that providing a tax refund for folks who earn less than 25,000 is an attempt to make this entire program look more progressive, right? But if I'm thinking it through right, the folks in this income category without the refund would simply be paying in and receiving benefits at a rate that is completely commensurate with their income level.
That's correct.
So that strikes me as fair. Just I'm thinking as I'm talking, that strikes me as fair. And I guess I would just be concerned about the complexity of, certainly of the kind of refund based on an individual return. And I need to think through whether a flat rate rebate is even really necessary, even though I understand why we're doing it. Okay.
Representative Elder Bounty, Chesterton.
Just in the general committee discussion that we're having, having thought about this section for a while, I personally think we should strike it. I see how this flat rate could be easier. I still don't think the juice is really worth the squeeze. And I also think that this bill provides value to people to invest in themselves, to have this insurance program. And I think it provides that value without them getting a refund. And there's just a huge percentage of Vermonters that are under 25,000. It is a low number, but it's a lot of people. And I don't see value in this section, frankly. And so I would favor eliminating it altogether. That's my piece.
Representative Labonte?
Yeah, just to piggyback a little bit off of Representative Elder, how many amount of people are we talking?
No,
And-
that JFO might have that information, but I don't.
And again, they are getting the benefit of the 12 weeks or whatever weeks they take. So, and the amount is like $68, like $70 for the year. And I don't know how much of a burden it's going to add on to the individuals that have to figure all this stuff out. And so I think I'd just soon strike it myself.
As far as the numbers of people who file income taxes for $25,000 or less, there's a chart right behind you.
Okay.
So we can,
Oh, okay.
but that's adjusted gross income, so it's slightly different. The other thing to consider is that what we learned from the tax commissioner was that people at that income level and below don't have to file tax returns. But if they have children and they want to take the earned income tax credit at any level that the tax credit's available, they have to file an income tax, or return. So it wouldn't be available, bless you, it wouldn't necessarily be available to everybody as an automatic. Representative Chestnut Tangerine. Joe, did I miss you? Did I see your hand up?
You may have, but I'm good, sorry. I don't know.
So Robin and then Representative Labor.
So I think that I just want to check my thinking with you, which is that, a flat rate refund or sounds simple, but I don't think it is, right? Because it still requires an individual determination in every case, whether it's a credit, a full payment, a partial payment.
My understanding from the department's testimony on this is that it's simpler than what's in the bill now. I don't know that I could characterize it as simple.
Like a marathon is easier than an Iron Man. But it's
So there are a couple different features that would make it simpler. One is there's no individualized determination. Two, this would allow people to file for a refund outside of their tax return, what's in the bill, versus what the Commissioner of Taxes proposed was just including it as part of the tax law, but that's going to include changes to the processing software for the taxes for that tax year, which they do those changes every year, but that's not cost free. And the administration may require additional checks to make sure that they're not making mistakes on these returns and that it's being processed correctly and so forth. So there's an administrative cost to both of these. I think it's just less if it's a flat benefit, but both of them have an administrative cost.
The way this is written, everybody who pays into this, everybody who pays into premium, they pay to the Department of Taxes, then the money is sent to the fund.
Yep.
I'm assuming that the reverse would happen if those checks went, if the tax refund check went out, that the tax department would then have to bill the fund for the amount of these.
Yeah, your contribution rate is built at a level that takes into account these refunds going out from the fund and presumably some administrative cost associated with that. So.
Representative Labor.
Thank you. I'm not aware, I guess I'm not sure of what the IRS floor is for single individual.
I don't know off the top of my head.
So that would be one of my concerns, but I think where it could get complicated. People are married and they file a joint return. That 25,000 number just changed
Right, so
on the AGI at least.
yeah, I think if you were to do the flat tax credit, you would have to structure it so that it's, single, married filing separately, married filing jointly, head of household. And again, I would need to work with Abby to get that done. But yeah, it would have to be structured around the way we file taxes. Otherwise, you see disparities in how people are treated based on their filing status and whether they're married or not.
And again, you can see a lot of that, you can see some of the numbers up on that chart there, which is available on the tax department website as well, if you dig down into the statistics. But Representative Elder, and I want to be conscious of your time, just remind you that you're gone at 4:30.
Yes, I am. Let's see, I'm just looking at the email Ron just forwarded us all from Patrick.
Yeah.
And that's obviously brings in the 90% level replacement, so it's not exactly parity on the numbers, but I think what I'm seeing here is exemption of that 25K seems to equate to about a 0.05 reduction. So taking the 0.55 down to about 0.5. And one thing to keep in mind is if you do that, everybody pays a little bit less, including the people under 25,000. So they get a little bit of that money back because they're now paying a lower rate because they're in the pool. So anyway, I think that reduction of about 9% of the rate is significant.
Yeah, so in that email, Patrick sent a chart that made an assumption of going down to 90% wage replacement, and that was from our conversation, but also the conversation that recipients wouldn't be paying the 7.5%. So it's 90% is roughly close to what the 100% would be to be an equivalent paycheck. And so the next two numbers, so at 200% of the Social Security number, with the exemption, it would go down to 0.53, from 0.55 to 0.53. At 200%, without the exemption, it would go down to 0.48. If you went to 100% of the Social Security max with the 25K exemption, it would be 0.55, what the thing is now. And then at 100% of Social Security max, without the 25K exemption, it would drop it to 0.50. So it's, again, this is the dial thing, right? This is just, if we do this, then this can happen. But that's just this is not tangential to what we're talking about at all, but it's the information that we asked for. So again, committee, where are we on 2069? I've heard a little bit of all of the choices that we have here. We can return to this tomorrow morning if we want. We want to sleep on it. I mean, I think it's clear that if I'm not mishearing, where we are with this is the choice now, not between this and nothing, it's between having a checkbox and not having this. Is that, am I accurate in how I'm hearing where the conversation is driving right now? So.
By check box, you mean like on your tax form?
Yeah, rather than having this way of, this process of doing it, the choices that are left on the table are, because we haven't made a decision yet, haven't heard a consensus here, is to make it a straight flat tax. I mean, I've heard problems with that or issues with that, or not having it.
Flat rate refund, you mean?
Yeah, so that's what I'm calling a checkbox. So
Okay.
you would just be filing your taxes and there would be a box that said, did you, boom, and then that would be credited to you in your taxes. Yes.
And I brought up the issue of the flat rate because I had heard it referenced but didn't really understand it. So I was looking for more information for it, but currently inclined to just lose the section. I mean, as Representative James said, I understand the progressive desire and usually I'm all there. But it just doesn't seem to make sense in this case.
And in what we were just discussing, would that be capping the contribution at the Social Security maximum?
Social Security maximum is another policy choice that we're making. Those numbers that we were provided just show. I mean, I do wish that there was 100% a graph with 100% replacement, because that's what we're working with right now. We haven't made a decision about 90, 100 or less. But nevertheless, the numbers, as they were talking about this morning, the numbers aren't changing that much. So, so in terms of what the contributions would be, again, we're not seeing a huge difference between, and the differences we can't see on that chart, so. Representative Burrows, you okay? Do you have a comment? I didn't know if I saw your hand up or not.
No, you did not.
So to be clear,
Yes,
clarifying question,
yes.
if we were to scrap this portion, we don't have the exact numbers for what it would be like at a rate of 100%, but at 90%, it would reduce the payment. So ultimately, everybody would be paying less. So it would reduce the need, even though we don't have the number at the 100% rate. Is that accurate?
Yes. So it would, I hate to say you could assume, yes, there would be a differential, but we don't have that number of what that differential would be if we were at the 100% wage replacement.
Thank you.
Do we want to hold off on this till tomorrow morning, or do we want to?
No.
Don't worry about it.
That's,
Can,
yes.
I say dump it.
It's pretty unceremonious.
I don't mean dump it, I mean leave it off.
Actually,
And that's leaving it off of our bill at this time. I mean, just, I'm just gonna remind people, what we see when we get this bill back, it may be there, it may not be there, it may be in a
Yep.
different form. I mean, the people have the different committees. By the time we see this again in April or May, it could be 60% at, 40 weeks at, I mean, it could be 100, there could be 100 different changes to it. Sorry, Damien, but that is true, isn't it?
1,000.
Thank you.
1,000.
Something to look forward to. All right, no
So,
going back.
so I guess the consensus is to, delete it at this time.
Right, it is deleted at this time. Um, all right,
So now we're to 2070, which has a change in it,
yep,
top of our page 42.
yeah, it's my page 39 to 40. See, that's what you guys have cut. You're doing a good job.
Almost back to a 48-page bill.
So yeah, this just adds the language about leave taken in relation to administration or settlement of an estate for more than 1 year after.
Can I just ask you a drafting question?
Sure.
It doesn't have to do with the content.
Mhm.
You make a universal change, do you make it going forward or do you make it going forward and backward?
What do you mean by that? So,
Is the change only good from this point
Yeah,
forward in the text? And the answer is.
no, the answer is no. So what you do when you do, so the way I do my universal changes is I use find and replace in Word. And that takes you get a list of every instance on the left-hand side. And I go through and I make the call, assuming it's not something that's really simple where I can just hit replace all. I go through and one by one, I check the language in the sentence. And if it needs a replacement, I make it. And if it doesn't, then I don't. So,
okay.
yeah, why did it miss something? Because that's also possible.
No, but we've been reading, sometimes when you do a universal change, it'll start from where you are and read to the end of the document.
Yeah, I always make sure to go all the way around. So,
Make it a global change.
yes, I call it a global change when I'm doing my editing. But yeah, that when I do it, it's to the whole document.
And I think you're to a different twist on your question, because this bill is made up of different sections of statutes, different chapters. The copywriting also has to go into how it affects the sections that aren't in here.
Yeah.
And so if there's a section in the paid leave law where we're changing, and it's not part of this change, then part of their copy editing is to make sure that it gets changed throughout.
And hopefully we catch those.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the next year we catch it in technical corrections.
Representative Lamont, did you have, Representative Parsons?
Thanks. I guess, so I'm just reading this and I totally agree with what I got put in there, but, does this just leave it open-ended at the moment, for 2 weeks for?
2 weeks for as long as the estate remains unsettled. So it could be years or it could be relatively quick. I mean, it just depends on the nature of the estate. But yeah, and you still have to show that there's a need for the time off to administer the estate. So you have to travel to a different state to attend a hearing or to, auction off goods or something like that. So that there does have to be some nexus. It's not just taking my 2 weeks for administration again, and then you can go off on vacation or something. You do have to have some nexus, but yeah, it's open-ended at this point. So if the estate remains unsettled for 10 years, then you could take time each of those years as necessary to continue doing the work of administering and settling that estate.
Still dealing with the 12 weeks and 12 months.
Yep, and you're still capped that way too. So this is 2 out of the 12 weeks, so it would reduce the amount of leave available for other purposes each year. So.
Okay, bottom of that page, family medical leave. We've seen this language before. And you still have that hyphen in the line, in section E. Sorry, I catch those things.
That's because I cut and paste. So. For better or worse.
Okay, and then on bottom of page 44, we have the language again. And that is the same language that is in the unpaid leave.
Yep, and remind me, were we waiting to discuss this or were we striking it?
Well, can I just? Let us discuss it now. We had reached a particular split decision on this earlier. We had support for either cutting it or support for keeping it. I believe we received did everybody receive an email from Michelle Fay, who has testified in our committee earlier today?
No.
Okay, I'll have Ron share it with you. You what? Okay, I don't know who got it, so if you didn't get it, then I will, email it. I don't have everybody on the, so the floor is open on this concept, both in this section and that section. So Representative James.
Madam Speaker, may I change my vote? Yeah, I had suggested earlier that I thought that this definition was, a little bit too expansive, but I have given it some thought. I did read the email from Michelle and talked to a few other members as well. And I think that this particular definition of family is extremely important to members of the LGBTQ community. And especially, or oftentimes for trans folks. And so I now have totally changed my mind, which is our prerogative, and would love to see this stay in.
Okay, Ron is sending everybody that email from Michelle Fay.
And I guess I would just kind of add that that's sort of a national conversation, I think. I don't think it's just, that's my opinion, or those are some thoughts I heard from, folks here in Vermont. I think that is a larger conversation that the LGBTQ community is kind of moving forward, and I want to make sure that we don't miss the boat on that. So anyway, I've gone from changed my mind completely on this one, and now would strongly support leaving it.
Well, and I can't say that I saw or I didn't see that.
Okay.
Until it was pointed out in this. I could understand it from the way I was understanding it was definitely from a next door neighbor or community perspective.
Me too.
And not necessarily this issue. Other comments on this section or feelings about this section?
I agree and support that. At first, when we talked about, I thought about, and then your example the other day about your neighbor that, that I thought about that, and I thought about, I have a similar situation, but then looking at it at a different lens. I think it's important, and I agree with that and leading with that language.
I'm sympathetic to, the individuals in these cases. My concern is how many people take advantage of this that aren't really, close friends, if you will, I could say, to my neighbor, yeah, you know what, Keith, yeah, he's a great friend of mine, and we're very close. I mow his lawn and I, do this and this, and, and now he's disabled and he needs, me to take him to the hospital or whatever the case may be. So that's my concern. But again, like I said, I'm sympathetic to those people that are close, if you will.
And I think, I think the thing to remember going back to this morning is that the way Damien described it was in the totality and not the checklist. And so, which is the application to take the leave under that circumstance would be to prove that the totality of the relationship, what makes you a qualified individual to take it, is pretty, I think there's a high bar with it based on what's in here. But that's, so, Representative James?
I was going to say something similar, just either through the language we have here or through rulemaking. It's far more stringent to meet this requirement than it would be of just saying like, hey, I've got a neighbor that I help out from time to time. And so I'm comfortable knowing that these applications will be filed. The division will be in charge of making sure they meet the test. And there will be a strict, test in place.
Yeah, I had earlier spoken in favor of cutting this, but thinking of it in terms of family, of chosen family, it's really important. And I think I share some of Dennis's concerns about if something is, it seems like an area, if there's an area where there's going to be cheating, I think it'll be this.
Yeah.
But it is, they can tighten it up through rulemaking, through review of, rigid review of every application. So I've also would like to change my vote, Madam Speaker.
I just want to say, this isn't a deal breaker for me. It's just, I was just, thinking of how many people take advantage, of the program and, with clarity that you, just discussed, the application into, being able to, get this, benefit, I guess it can be more stringent than in other cases. And, but like I said, it's not a deal breaker for me.
Representative Lamont?
And I just wanted to offer also that when you think about things and if you contextualize this and what it's for and who it's for, oftentimes this is probably going to be actually underutilized as much as it could be. Because oftentimes people don't think of who are those natural resources in their life. And so when you're in that state of crisis, you may not think of this. This is built in my opinion, as so that you can, but I don't think that it will even be on a lot of people's radar that they have access to it, if that makes sense. So I just want to err on that side also.
Representative Howard?
I think that there always will be people who will take advantage of whatever plan. But I think that there are enough checks and balances to figure out who those people are. Today, so many families are just strewn across the country that there are so many seniors that have no family. Mm-hmm. And, their neighbors become their family. And I agree it may not be used as often maybe as it should be. But I think it's, it's very important. We tend to put money before people, and we need to get out of that mindset, and it's time that we think about people and care about people. So I support this.
I guess I'm just going back to a movie we just watched with Tom Hanks about Who's Auto or something.
Oh,
like
I
that.
saw that.
You know, and that's pretty much exactly what this is saying.
Exactly.
He had no family, but the couple moved in next door, and then he became extremely close to them, and he helped them all out and everything, and then vice versa. And so, yeah, a man called Otto, that's who it was.
That's right. Yeah.
I think my main
I
conflict
saw.
with that movie is, why is Tom Hanks in every movie?
It was what I expected.
Yeah.
It was what I had expected.
Representative Krasny.
Yeah, I'll just say one more thing. I think about our seniors, but I think, and not that I'm here for myself, but you know, I lost both my parents and I have a partner of 3 years. We're not married. If something happened to them, I think it's important that we work on policy that is for everyone and doesn't exclude people, and I'd like to keep that in. I feel strongly about that now, and I appreciate folks who stood up for it and made us see it through another lens.
And I will just, say the testimony we took on fraud showed that fraud in these programs, and granted, we're expanding these definitions. There's no question that there's possibilities that are endless, but fraud in these programs is minimal. I mean, and extremely minimal. We're talking, what the testimony we took is that it was very low. The proof will be in the enforcement of the applications, and so I'm okay to keep it in.
Put it back.
Okay, thank you for the conversation on it. Line 17, section 14, and highest earning quarters.
Yeah, so there was a question about whether you wanted to keep that formula for determining the benefits, or you wanted a different one. That's a committee discussion point.
Again, I've heard this for several years, so I'm comfortable with it personally. But, committee?
Last night, Damien and I kept him from working on this by going down to his office. Talking to him.
Well, he didn't work on it until 7:43.
And talked about other options, just like, why not just was employed in the previous year, and the explanation. I don't know if you can do the 30-second. No. But I was convinced that this is a workable definition because of the overlay of what information is available when and to whom, and that information, we don't. Anyway, to try to keep it short, I became comfortable with this. Didn't start there.
Representative Bowden.
This is pretty much on the same basis as unemployment.
It's based off of that, yeah.
Exactly the same?
Yeah, close.
Okay.
Unemployment uses a slightly different base period, but it's the two highest earning
Yeah,
quarters in
earning
that,
quarter.
in that base period.
If I remember, right, unemployment was 5 weeks.
It's the first 4 or the last 4 of the first 4 of the last 5 completed
Yeah,
calendar
yeah,
quarters,
yeah.
or the last 4 of the last 5
Yeah, that's
completed
correct.
calendar
Yeah,
quarters.
yeah.
or if you don't qualify under either of those bases, the last 3 of the last 5 plus the partial calendar quarter. And if that still doesn't work, there's a 4th way to qualify that I forgot.
Okay, so we'll stick to this one.
Yeah, unemployment is exceptionally complicated. But it's designed to get benefits out. This is a much simpler construct. Last 4 calendar quarters, your best 2 earning calendar quarters. But you could set it up any way you want. But this is just a simplified version of unemployment.
Committee okay with that? Okay. 15 in local parentheses, the same language as in the unpaid leave.
Yep.
We discussed that earlier. Page 46 in definition 18. Did we really need additional committee discussion on qualifying exigency, or do we just need, when we have to talk about this further, that we know what 29 CFR 825-126 is?
And I can send that to you.
A small book.
I'm not gonna send you the whole CFR, just that section.
Right. Any further questions about the military leave exigency, the qualified exigency? Over to page 47. Definition 20. What were we going to discuss about this?
So, yeah, that's a cryptic message, isn't it? So there is, for the sole proprietor and partner owner of an unincorporated business, it makes no mention of whether or not they have employees. For the LLC and corporation, it says that does not have any employees. So you could change it so it's sole owner, sole proprietor or partner owner of an unincorporated business, the sole member of an LLC, or the sole shareholder of a corporation. And that would allow a small business owner that's self-employed, but also employs people to file for the self-employed benefit. So I don't know, the plumber who has, master plumber who employs an apprentice and a journeyman or something like that.
Just clarifying, so, as written, now it has no employees, that would mean a sole proprietor who, with employees, is not qualified because they are not an employee.
Right, so, so a sole proprietor with employees can qualify as a self-employed individual. So they can opt in to the program. Under the current construct, they could either have employees or not, but they could opt into the program as a self-employed individual, assuming there's no treatment of themselves as an employee. The alternative, but if for example, they incorporate or form an LLC to provide liability protection, they're no longer allowed to have employees under the way the bill's written, which could potentially exclude some of the small businesses where you would have, like I mentioned, the master plumber, master electrician option where they could be employing an apprentice or a journeyman that helps them complete their work. But it's still a sole shareholder corporation or something like that. If they become a dual shareholder corporation where, for example, spouses or partners are the 2 shareholders, then they'd have to treat themselves as an employee to opt in. So that's kind of the cutoff there, is it has to be a sole.
Do you know what the thinking was to have it, to be written like this, to include the does not have any employees language?
So the language came from one of the bills related to independent contractors.
That's where I heard it.
So this is out of an independent contractor bill from the mid-2010s. And I don't think we've ever asked questions about the employees language. And the sole proprietor or partner owner was to track with the workers' compensation, which allows for a sole proprietor or partner owner of an unincorporated business to opt out with no mention of whether they have employees. For the LLCs and the corporations, the issue that came up with at the time, and the reason why there's no employees pieces in here, is that there was a court case that went to the Supreme Court where an individual formed an LLC and then was exempted from the unemployment insurance law when they were functioning as an employee because they were paid through their LLC, which is a person but not an individual, and the law says individual. And so the bill would have defined individual to include sole member LLCs with no employees and sole shareholder corporations with no employees. And the language it was one of those instructions, take the language from that bill, put it in here. And I thought about this the other day and realized that it probably got put in late in the session, I'm guessing, and didn't have much time in committee for the questions like this. And the language has just stayed ever since, so.
So I'd like to see the more inclusive language.
That was a long explanation, but there's view of the sausage.
Labor.
Yes, thank you. Damian, how would that play out with an LLC member owner not hiring an employee, but hiring somebody with the expertise that he currently wants on the short term was a 1099?
That person should be an independent contractor, and they should themselves be under this self-employed individual definition here. So we're including this language isn't going to delve into the debate of who should be paid by 1099 and who should be paid by W-2, which is the whole independent contractor versus employee. But in the fact scenario you're describing an independent contractor, someone who comes on for a short term to meet a specific short-term need at a business and then leaves, and they don't function as an employee. They may consult, they may provide a service.
They don't duplicate.
Yep, and in this case, if we take out that language, so it's now would read like this. That sole member LLC that hired the independent contractor, let's say to do an IT project, or as a subcontractor on a project or something, they don't have liability for that employee or independent contractor. What I should say is they don't have liability for that independent contractor. The independent contractor decides whether or not to opt in on their own. If it was an employee, that employee would be covered, but the self-employed owner of the LLC, if they're not paying themselves as an employee, could still opt in under this. And otherwise they would be barred if they had any employees. So.
So does this language solve that problem?
It solves the no employees problem. I think that's the one you're referring to.
Yep.
Yeah. So it solves the problem of an LLC, a sole member LLC or sole shareholder corporation having to choose between staying enrolled in benefits or having to pay themselves as an employee if they want to hire anyone else to work for them. So. Okay.
So then we get down to 22C, which is language that we saw earlier today, we made choices.
Yeah, so what I'm gonna do instead of going back and making those changes now is just make a note to myself to, wrong button, is to just mirror what we did.
Yeah. Okay, top of page 49, there's a section change just because we switched everything around, adoption of rules. For us, the top of page 50, we have section D, change date or delete subsection. We seem to have defined what that is.
So what I would recommend, since you've defined it, so this was pushed way out because there was a big question of like, how are we gonna define this? It's gonna take a while to research. You've given them parameters. They have 21 months to adopt rules. So you can just delete this subsection, and they'll adopt rules related to that significant personal bond as part of everything else. And you don't need to have separate rulemaking. So that way, okay.
Over to page 51 of 52. In section 9, where we discussed rather than 26, 27, and 28, going to 27, 28, and 29.
Yep, or you could go 26 through 29 too. But 27 to 29 puts it into actually having benefits drawn.
Right, so that would determine what the, I mean, we could, right, we wouldn't be guessing what the reserves should be. We went to 27 because we'd have a full year.
You'd have 3 months. Because it starts October 1, 2026. So you have a quarter of benefits experience. And then my guess is they wouldn't have a lot to say that year, but then in 2028, they'd have a lot more to say.
Okay.
So make the change.
Yes, please.
Everybody needs coffee.
I like the 26,
Just to see
Just
if we
adding.
start.
yeah, but it's not.
Do all four too.
Just throw it in.
It's
fair.
I mean, there's just a whole lot of unknowns.
Yeah.
Okay. And I do think that having, even with the 29, I think it's reasonable because it's gonna take several years for the program to smooth out.
So the effective dates are gonna change dramatically tonight with the new sections. So I'd recommend just holding off on reviewing those.
Okay. Committee, thank you so much. We got through page.
Okay. Do you have anything else for me tonight?
I don't.
Okay.
Robin has a few questions.
Can he walk you home?
Well, we're heading to pick up my daughter from daycare, but you're welcome to come over.
I'll talk to you on the way.
How are you with hot glue guns?
Very good.
It's an after-school arts program, so.
Is this for Astrid? We can go off live.
Yes. Thanks, Ron.
Oh, my gosh.
Tomorrow. Representative from the Lake Champlain Chamber has requested time to just go over his concerns with the bill. I've asked Amy.
He's confirmed at 9.
And so we'll hear some testimony from him. Megan, do you have any interest in commenting on the bill any further before we finish up? Tomorrow? Yes. As I told Austin, of course, this bill has many miles to go. So the idea for tomorrow will be that we'll hear testimony. Hopefully, we will receive the next copy, the next draft of the bill in whatever form it's going to be in. And we will review the changes we made today. And then hopefully we will have the time to have a clean copy done.
By 10:30?
I need we need to review the changes and make sure everything was done right. And then we need to have a clean copy to vote on, which
Right, so I mean,
I'm thinking between 1 and 2. So if we can have a clean copy to vote on between 1 and 2, that's what I'm shooting for, and understanding that life may change.
right, but you need an updated draft ready for 10:30 tomorrow morning, right?
No, for 9:30.
Okay.
10:30, we have a joint session on the floor. Bless you.
That hour sleep up.
Astrid called, said she would be happy to proofread.
Okay,
And
so I'm actually scheduled down the hall at 9:30.
okay,
Oh dear. Okay,
still present it to us, and then we can review it.
yep, I can send it to you, and you have a joint session at 10:30?
We have a joint session of 10:30. I mean, the reality is that we have between 1 and 3 as well. We're
Okay,
taking off, we have the joint hearing tomorrow night, and we're trying to
okay,
people rest before that. And so, yes, we have between 1 and 3 as well to finish up on this bill.
okay.
That would be
I will do what I can to juggle.
I mean, certainly by presenting us with the bill, we can certainly read it by ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and review it by ourselves in a
I can
library
Join
fashion.
you and,
And then we can go through it. I don't think there's gonna be a ton of substantive changes that we have to review from what you're adding tonight. And, so let's just do it like that. And then, Friday, we have the HCC, the Vermont Housing and Conservation Coalition, which is a bunch of housing and conservation folks. They're gonna come to our committee and talk to us. And then in the afternoon, we have a handful of bill introductions, sponsor introductions. There'll be one walkthrough of H111. And then Tuesday, we're gonna wipe out 80% of that board for sponsorships and just catch up on that. And then we'll start with housing bills and start putting together what essentially may be a committee bill before the end of we'll work that out. So thank you very, very, very much for the work today, yesterday, and tomorrow in advance. All right, and thank you.
you're welcome.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, yeah, please don't send
All right.
requests for